and that's where we ended. The traveling preacher's eyes darted around, and then he spied the man at the side of the trail. "You may not want to keep going down this trail," the man warned. "What's going on?" the preacher worried. The man cautioned, "Indians just scalped and killed a group of Baptists a little ways up the trail." "Thanks for the warning. I'll be careful." The circuit rider rode off, trusting God to keep him safe. Settlers in the territories had to learn to be tough to survive. Some places used whiskey in place of money. They did not seem to have any respect for God, as the people danced, drank homemade whiskey, cussed, and fought. In 1790, when Francis saw the wilderness road, he said, "We found such a set of sinners as made it next to hell itself." Francis and his circuit riders found, however, that the power of God could bring holiness even to these. Francis realized the dangers that his circuit riders faced and the horrible weather they must ride through. They preached almost every day, going from farm to farm. Sometimes their stops would take weeks to circle and cover different counties, telling of God's free grace, instant salvation, holy living, and how to seek to be sanctified. They would turn these circuits into organized groups. It was not unusual for these traveling preachers to wear out more than one horse. Once a year, the preachers would all gather at conference. They would wait as Francis or Bishop Asbury would amble to the front and slowly open his book. One by one, he would name where each preacher was being assigned. Some of the preachers would sigh with relief if it were an easy area, while others would feel their hearts drop to their feet in shock and fear. Some preachers, like Brother O'Kelly, did not think that Francis should have that much power, and they split from the group. Francis was able to win most of the ones which left back to the Methodists by love. Most of the circuit riders realized that Francis would never ask them to go anywhere that he himself would not go. When Francis assigned one of his preachers, Peter Cartwright, to a hard place in Ohio, Peter begged Francis to change it. Francis put his arms around Peter. "Oh no, my son. Go in the name of the Lord. It will make a man of you." When Francis saw that his circuit riders needed something, he would try to give it to them, even if it was a jacket off of his own back or his own personal money. Every day he brought his riders' names before God and prayed for them wherever they were. He wanted God to give them a holy message to preach and not empty stuff to please the ear instead of changing the heart. He told his men, "When you go into the pulpit, go from your closets. Take with you your hearts full of fresh spring water from heaven and preach Christ crucified and the resurrection, and that will conquer the world." On the American frontier, people began to gather for what they called camp meeting. In 1800, Francis was amazed as he visited his first camping near Nashville. Camp meeting, sorry. Preachers would be up preaching to the people while hundreds of people would be praying. One of these that knelt and prayed was Nancy Hanks. Anybody besides my husband know who Nancy Hanks is, Joshua? Joshua, think about 2 weeks ago. Dad's telling you.
I didn't say yet.
Well, he was the mother of Abraham Lincoln. We just saw her grave. But anyways, one of these that knelt and prayed was Nancy Hanks, mother of Abe Lincoln. Others would be shouting. It seemed like Peter Cartwright said that the heavenly fire spread almost every direction. As Francis saw the rough frontiersmen, sometimes in crowds as large as 25,000, he was spellbound. This is fishing with a large net. By 1820, the Methodists had 1,000 camp meetings. Men, women, and children would travel from miles away, arriving on horses and wagons. They would bring their own food, eat by campfire, and sleep on the ground, a tent, or in wagons. The people would crowd in to find out that they did not have to earn God's love. They could know they were forgiven or saved, but that then their heart would be so radically changed that they would want to live a holy life. Thousands were being saved and sanctified and joining the Methodist Church. "We American Methodists pray and preach and sing and shout aloud," said Francis. As an older man, Francis Asbury became the most known man in America. People in little faraway places got used to his visits and loved him. They saw how he had ridden to them even when he was in pain and violently sick. Once he was so sick that he could not sit up, but had to be strapped onto his horse so he would not fall off. He had crossed the Appalachian Mountains to get to his people about 60 times and gone up and down the seaboard coast multiple times. The people would see him coming on his horse. "Bishop Asbury is coming! Bishop Asbury is coming!" One little child ran into his mother. "I want my face washed and a clean apron on. Bishop Asbury is coming, and I know he'll hug me up." In 1798, he got the news that his father had died. He felt like an orphan. He had already been sick, and depression settled in. He tried different treatments, one of which was a drink he made of cider and water boiled from 100 nails. If that did not help him, the doctors would bleed him a little or take leeches and let them suck his blood. This was a common practice back in the day. After he had several ounces of blood taken away, he was so sick he had to ride in a little carriage. He wrote his mother, "Oh, my mother, let us be holy and watch and pray that we may meet in heaven."
Amen.
10 years later, his mother died. It was a heartache to Francis that once he came to America, he never was able to see his parents in England again. He gave up his family and home to serve in America. He traveled until he gave up the last of his strength and health. Finally, he was little more than a walking skeleton. His hair was white and his back bent. Brother John Wesley Bond became his assistant and helped him ride to his appointments by carriage and carried him like a child. Even as Francis poured the last of his energy out, it was not wasted. He said, "If I had 1,000 hearts and tongues and 1,000,000 of years to live, all would be insufficient for paying the mighty debt of praise to God." When he came to America, 10 preachers came to the first meeting. There were only 1,160 members. By 1816, there were 700 preachers and 214,235 Methodist members.
Wow.
On March 31st, 1816, he could no longer talk. His face lit up with joy, and he raised his hand. Brother Bond knew that death was near and asked him, "Do you believe that Jesus is precious?" Francis could not answer, but he raised both of his hands. In a few minutes, he was home in heaven. He was 71 years old. Brother Bond sent the news across the continent that our dear father has left us. He died as he lived, full of confidence, full of love. No one had to ask who the father was. The Methodist Church had other bishops, but only one father.
Amen.